Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are continuing our first look at the Italian destroyer line as we move on up to check out Tier 6's Aviere. Aviere is in a crowded field at Tier 6. There are a lot of really good Tier 6 destroyers, and some of what you might expect to see out of this ship in this tier, I feel like, again, on paper, she is going to feel a little eclipsed by some of the other already available options. Now, I don't think she's bad, but I don't think she's as good as you might wish, and I don't think she's as good as Maestrale was down at Tier 5. Let me explain my position, and we'll talk through the ship. First up, survivability, 14,300 hit points. Definitely on the high end for Tier 6, but not amazing. Not amazing. Ernst Gade and her premium cousin, Karl von Schönberg, both have 16,500. Even premium T-61 German destroyer, Tier 6, has 14,700. Not to mention, the French Guépard has over 17,000 hit points. So, I mean, this is competitive. But this is a healthy amount of a healthy hit pool for a Tier 6 destroyer, but it doesn't feel as noteworthy as Maestrale's advantage did down at Tier 5. I mean, other than Jaguar down at Tier 5, like Maestrale had about a 200-ish HP advantage against most other Tier 5 destroyers. Aviere, much closer to average. Much closer to average. Armor layout, it's 16 mils throughout, I think. Yeah, nothing to get excited about here. 10 millimeters on the superstructure, 16 on the hull. You're not bouncing anything, you're taking full pens. Sucks to be you. Maneuverability and concealment, 38 knots, 570 on the turning circle, 3.6 on the rudder shift. 38 knots is above average. It is not best in tier. It ties her with Vesteris and Gnevny, but it is, I mean, most Tier 6 destroyers, 35, 36 knots. So you come in with a speed advantage. And then, of course, you will still get access to that fancy 25% emergency speed boost, which you'll be able to bump this up to, quick math in my head, 3.8 times 2, 7.6, plus another 5%. It's going to add over 10 knots to her speed. With that emergency speed boost up, this thing's going to close in on 50 knots. With the speed flag, she'll break 50 knots. For Tier 6, that's pretty neat. That's pretty nice. 570 in the turning circle is, I'd say, above average. A lot of 650s, 680s, 690s, 620s. So Tier 6, we talked about the Italian destroyers should feel like they handle better. This is where I think you're really going to start to notice. When you compare the handling of this ship to some of her contemporaries, it should feel noticeably better. 3.6 on the rudder shift is average. There are some ships that are worse than this, but worst in tier is like 4.4. 4.0 is kind of high. 3.6, 3.4 is kind of average. So rudder shift is average, but the turning circle is quite good. Aviere's surface detection, you see there on import, is listed at 7.1. That is incorrect. They've already nerfed the surface detection of this ship up to 7.34 kilometers on the surface. When you translate that down to a full stealth rig, that gets her down to 6.41 kilometers of surface detection at Tier 6. Clearly not best in tier in a world where Hatsuharu exists, right? But not awful, like not atrocious. Farragut is still 6.6, right? Igla is 6. Both French destroyers really are 6.7 and change. All of the Germans, basically, other than T-61, 6.6 and change. So this is, I'd say, a very average detection. It's not her strongest suit, but it's not her weakest. Artillery. Main battery sticking with the 120mm 50 caliber guns that we got used to down at Tier 5. However, some changes here. The mount has changed. We've now modernized this mount, and I have an extra gun. So my midships gun here is a single, and then I have a double turret up forward, as we've been seeing, a double turret in the aft, and then I accidentally clicked on the single to kind of spoil it for you there, but she does have a midships turret, a single-barreled one right there in the middle. Note the velocity on these shells. It was 840 meters per second down at Tier 5. Now, the 50 caliber barrel combined with these shells, that velocity up to 950 meters per second. Main battery range out to 7.7 kilometers. That is correct after all of the various buffs the ship has received. So this is interesting. you'll have about a kilometer and change to play with in terms of gun range versus detection. But the guns start to get really, like 950 meters a second is going to feel really good. These guns are going to go where you aim them. That turret traverse is still quite solid. She ought to be able to get all 5 guns on target. And again, that SAP DPM against opposing destroyers should be absolute bloody murder. This thing puts out, with the SAP, if you're landing all 5 shells every time and you're getting full pins out of the SAP, not bounces, over 155,000 DPM out of a tier 6 destroyer. That is lunacy. Absolute lunacy. So again, if you find yourself, if you're a Farragut and you find yourself in a point-blank gunfight with one of these things, you are in trouble. Okay, most ships at tier 6, most of these little tier 6 destroyers, you used to running around, you think, oh, I'm hot stuff, I've got guns, I'm a gunfighter. Well, yeah, you may find yourself outclassed by Aviere here. So keep that in mind, okay? Lots to like about her main battery, particularly in the assassinating opposing destroyers category. Let's check that 5.5 reload. Is that still correct? Yes, that is the correct reload. So yeah, nice to see there. Nice to see. Really, really good guns. This thing should just murder destroyers that she happens to stumble across. And again, her detection is going to allow her to get into range of most things she would want to assassinate in terms of opposing destroyers. And she has that crazy speed boost to close even closer in. So if she's chasing a Hatsuharu, for example, which outspots her by a half kilometer or more, she can run the Hatsu down. Now, where this is going to feel bad, because we are now at tier 6, not only are we going to start running into tier 8 boats that have concealment expert, we're going to start running into more and more and more radar. So now one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, because we're just starting to really get to a tier where it becomes a thing, right? I have 7.7 kilometers of main battery range. That's it. I'm in a tier now where 7.5 kilometer radar, like Atlanta or Belfast, is not that uncommon. I'm in a tier where I'm going to see the occasional 12 kilometer radar out of a Chapayev or a Tallinn, and I have a 7.7 kilometer main battery range. Woof. Woof. These ships just feel so hyper specialized at killing destroyers. Like, they're going to be fabulous cap contesters. But after that, then what? Like, if you own the cap that you're on, I guess you can defend it, but like, your contribution to your team's damage output at that point is going to be fairly minimal, because the torpedoes continue to suck, right? So we got a pair of triple centerline mounted launchers here. I'll kind of zoom in here. The port screen there showing you 70 seconds. This has, in fact, been nerfed down to 75 seconds. Now, one of the nice things is we're starting to get, as we saw down at Tier 5, we're starting to get some real range and finally some decent damage. I've got 10 kilometer range and a 10,000 damage alpha out of these torpedoes. Now, that's not amazing, right? Some of the torpedoes in this tier go up to 16 and change in terms of their alpha damage, but it's way better than the pathetic 6 and 7 and 9,000 alpha damage that I was getting up to this point. So that's nice. The reload is still a problem, in my opinion, and the speed is still low. It's not worse than tier, but only because Leone exists, basically. Leone is the next slowest, right? So that's not anything to get excited about. And then the surface detection combined with everything means that on these torpedoes means that your opponents have about 7.5 seconds of reaction time. That is it's actually maybe a little above, I should say below. It's a little below average. It's a little better than normal for this tier, but it's still not anything to get excited about, because, again, you're going to be looking at tier 8 battleships, the occasional one of which will crack 30 knots, or even a Gneisenau, like at tier 7, will easily crack 30 knots. So, yeah, these torps, I don't know, man. Like, I look at them and I want to like them. I want them to be useful, but I really still feel like they're meme torps, and it's all about the guns. It really is to me. A, defense remains bad. We've got a 3.5 kilometer outer bubble, a 2 kilometer inner bubble, and I'm saying outer when it's really just medium range. Ship has no flak. In fact, I'll spoil it for you now. No Italian destroyer has an outer ring, period. All the way to the top of the line, I'm pretty confident they have no outer A bubble and no flak whatsoever. These ships are going to be absolute fodder for any carrier that decides he wants to harass you. So if you're used to playing Paolo Emilio, well, you should be used to that. So yeah, nothing to get excited about on the AA, but there it is if you want to have a check of it. You do have a little bit of flak. No, I'm sorry, I've just said you had no flak, but you do have a little bit of continuous DPS there. Occasional plane flies over, you'll shoot it down. You'll be able to clear out fighters, right? They drop fighters to keep you spotted. You'll be able to clear those out, but that's about all this AA is really, really good for. Quick look over consumables. Let's get back into the equipment tab and have a quick peek. Yep, again, we're looking at damage control party as we have been seeing. Let me verify that we're getting the speed boost. Yes, we are. So again, 4 charges of exhaust smoke generator. And then, of course, what's not shown just yet is that emergency speed boost that we looked at in the Tier 5 video should be a 25% boost for... Let's see, what is Kunibert to get? 25% boost for 25 seconds. So you get a whole bunch of speed on a very short, very short action time, but a very long cooldown. It's interesting to me that they've adapted that, right? That was, like a super mega ultra burst speed kind of thing like that was something that was first suggested back at the CC Summit in 2019. The Russian team that was working on Paolo Emilio, I've got a video on the channel here. We were doing a design challenge. They invited all of the different community contributor groups from the various nations to work, various regions to participate in a design challenge about Paolo Emilio. I'll put a link in there if you actually want to go back and watch that video. I'll link to the timestamp so you can skip straight to it. But the Russian team was one of the first ones that actually suggested a crazy speed boost on a really short duration and a really long cooldown. So you could just fly across the waves for 30 or 40 seconds, and then you couldn't touch that button again for like 4 minutes. So I think as I look at Aviere, again, the Italian destroyer line to me still continues to feel like one that is going to be really, really strong cap contesters, really, really bad at just about everything else until ships start to get very, very low on health. I mean, this thing, do you want to really close within 7 kilometers of an opposing Baltimore to use your guns? Because you're going to be up to tier 8 sometimes in this thing, and I don't think that's going to be all that exciting. So just... you got to pick and choose your battles very carefully with these ships, I think. Anyway, guys, there's our quick look at our first look, I should say, at Tier 6 Italian Destroyer Aviere. Hope you enjoy that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.